Hey everybody, good morning to you. Welcome to the Morning Devo with Bo. Super stoked to be in the house with you guys on this Friday, the 14th, 2022. And you're right. Everybody in the comment corner is right. It is a cold and chilly morning. Very nice. Nice to have your house down to a good, 61 degrees maybe. Get your hot drink out and ready to go. I don't really have a hot drink out today, but you know what? I'll toast with you guys out there with your tea and your coffee to our brother Jesus Urbina, dedicating the whole week over to our buddy Jesus, who has been such a valuable brother in our church and in the comment corners here in the Devo. Always such an awesome prayer warrior. And I know he would want us to be in the Word, man. If I know Jesus, he would say, get in the Word, bro. That's what he would tell me. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to be in the Word this morning. Genesis 49 and 50. We're going to go through something that a kind of a theme of these two chapters. And so let's get into it. It's not the most popular theme in the world, but one that a Christian takes head on, if you will. So here we go. It says here that Jacob called together his sons, and he said, gather around me, and I will tell you what will happen to each of you in the days to come. Now, I really love this and think this is kind of cool too. And it makes me think in the morning Devo is, do I know my kids really well? And now you mothers, man, they're sharp. And a lot of times mothers have such a good understanding of the children, where the dads can be a little aloof when it comes to the character qualities of our kids. But it is neat to see a dad when a dad is really honed in, really tuned in to their kids and the character qualities that their kid has or don't have, and is able to do this, is able to get with your kids and tell each of them what is going to happen in the days to come. Now, remember, these kids have been given an allotment of land into the land of Canaan. They've been promised this. This is a promise that has been given to them through their descendants, Abraham, Isaac, and now Jacob, their father. Jacob's name has been changed, remember, to Israel. Tina says, I think I do know, I do, but God knows them better. That's a good answer, Mom. Yes, for sure. So, okay, so now Jacob says, come and listen to, and he says, you sons of Jacob, listen to Israel, your father. And now he goes over these future, what's going to happen to you. He says, Reuben, you are my firstborn, my strength, the child of my vigorous youth. You are first in rank and first in power, but you are unruly as a flood, and you will be first no longer. For you went to bed with my wife, and you defiled my marriage couch. That would be quite a word from the old man, don't you think? To get that one. Hey, I'm firstborn. I'm first in power, strength, but I'm as unruly as a flood. Right? A flood hits everything, right? It just goes where it goes, and where it stops, nobody knows. And a flood is something that's uncontrollable. So he says, you are, and look at what you did. And, man, so anyway, it basically says the firstborn is kind of rights, power, all that is taken away. Now, Simeon and Levi are two of a kind. Their weapons are instruments of violence. If we can remember back to the violent actions of Simeon and Levi, we would kind of be appalled if they were your if they were your buddies, if you knew people like this, right? That literally wiped out a whole town. But that's how Simeon and Levi were. They were some violent folk. And it says, may I never join in their meetings, and may I never be a party to their plans. For in their anger they murdered men, and they crippled oxen just for sport. Oh, man. Oh, whoa. That's radical. Crippled oxen just for sport. Man, that's intense. A curse on their anger, for it is fierce. A curse on their wrath, for it is cruel. I will scatter them among the descendants of Jacob. I will disperse them throughout Israel. Judah, your brothers will praise you. You will grasp your enemies by the neck. So Judah becomes the first one that is actually going to get some praise here. It says, you will grasp your enemies by the neck, and all your relatives will bow before you. So you're going to be a powerful guy. Powerful nation is going to be powerful descendants, powerful tribe. So for those that are learning the Bible, we're going through kind of the 12 tribes of Israel, of Jacob now, and he's telling them a little bit about their future, what the tribe will be like. Interesting, right? So we get to this guy Judah, and his tribe is going to be a strong tribe. And it says, Judah, my son, is a young lion that has finished eating its prey. So, you always think of a lion as like the king of the jungle, right? It says, like a lion, he crouches and lies down, like a lioness who dares to rouse him. Man, so he becomes like a ruler, right? A king. It says the scepter is in the hands of the king, right? A scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from his descendants until the coming of the one to whom it belongs, the one whom all nations will honor. Verse 10 is a very important passage to underline. It's one that is going to follow us on our biblical journey all the way to Jesus. That's right. So Jesus is, if you were with us actually at Calvary Christian Fellowship on Wednesday, Pastor Scott was teaching through Revelation chapter 5. And in there, we got this really interesting reference to this verse again. Isn't that weird? All the way, we're in Genesis 49, and all the way in Revelation chapter 5, you get a title for Jesus. And he is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. That's right, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And here we see where this reference, or where that reference in Revelation is coming from. It's coming from this blessing of Israel, or AKA Jacob. And so when Jacob gives the blessing to Judah, he says that you will be a ruler. And he mentions this interesting prophecy about the Messiah. The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from his descendants until the coming of the one to whom it belongs. Now, most of our other Bibles actually say it this way. And let me read it to you in another version, because I kind of like the older versions of this. But it talks about the scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from his descendants until Shiloh comes. And so you might have a rendering, a biblical rendering of that. And then we have to ask the question, who is Shiloh? And then we do a little Bible study, and it's generally been understood to denote the Messiah, the Messianic one, the peaceful one, Shiloh, peaceful one. So the peaceful one's going to come. Isn't that cool? The peaceful one, the one who is sent, right? The peaceful one. It's an allusion of an allusion to the Messiah, and this is kind of interesting, and so this is an important passage for us. It's one for us to note, and it's one for us to study. And I think you will find in your biblical studies that this will be one of those very cool gems that you'll always go back to, and it'll help your heart just be at ease with always answering that question, is the Bible the Word of God? And these passages like this that become super prophetic and really speak of the coming of Jesus in some very specific ways, really solidify in our hearts, really can stabilize us in our life, and bring us at ease to know that when we are following the Bible, we are not just following just any old collection of books, but we are following a miraculous hand of God, touched by God, revelation, one that speaks of future events long before they come to pass. So Judah's, and the nub of this prophecy is that Judah will have the scepter depart from them. So there will be a time where the rulership, the scepter, that picture of rulership, will depart from Judah. And it says, but not until the coming of Shiloh. Isn't that interesting? So when Shiloh comes on the scene, Messiah comes on the scene, Judah, the scepter, will depart from Judah. Judah will no longer have its judicial power. It will be lost. And so that should trigger your biblical brains, you biblical scholars out there, to the time of Christ, that when Jesus was on the scene as a little kid, the scepter did depart from the tribe of Judah, and Judah no longer had the judicial power over Israel, but Israel now was under the judicial power of Rome. And there are some very interesting rabbinical writings during that time of Jesus's birth and childhood that state that the scepter has departed from Judah, and where is Shiloh? And so, man, there's some really neat stuff to pick apart with that verse 10. So it says he ties his foal to a grapevine, the colt of his donkey to a choice vine. Man, he's going to have great grapevines, I guess. This guy's going to be into wine. It says he washes his clothes in wine. So I don't know if you're a red wine person, a white wine person, but it sounds like they're going to have a lot of wine in Judah. That's for sure. And it says his eyes are darker than wine and his teeth are whiter than milk. So, wow, they definitely are going to be producers, and they're going to have maybe a milk company and a vineyard. Zebulun will settle by the seashore and will be a harbor for ships. His borders will extend to Sidon. And then you have Issachar, which is a sturdy donkey resting between two saddle packs. When he sees how good the countryside is and how pleasant the land, he will bend his shoulder to the load and submit himself to hard labor. Hey, do you have a kid that you go, man, that kid's going to be a hard-working man, or that kind of idea? That's what it sounds like. Dan will govern his people like any other tribe in Israel. Dan will be a snake beside the road, a poisonous viper along the path that bites the horse's hooves so its rider is thrown off. I trust in you for salvation, O Lord. Wow, interesting prophecy regarding Dan. One that maybe you take note of and maybe do a little more research on the tribe of Dan. And you might find some really interesting tidbits, because that is certainly an interesting prophecy Jacob gives, don't you guys think? Boy. Dan will govern his people like any other tribe in Israel, but he will be a snake. Anyway, it's very interesting. And then it says, verse 18, I trust you, O Lord, for salvation. And it says, Gad will be attacked by marauding bands, but he will attack them when they retreat. That's all that's said about Gad. Asher will dine on rich foods and produce food fit for kings. Asher's going to be the cook of the family, it sounds like. Very interesting as well. I don't know if you have a cook in the family. Naphtali is a doe set free that bears beautiful fawns. That's interesting too, huh? A doe set free that bears beautiful fawns. Sounds kind of romantic language there. Is Naphtali going to be the poet? What's Naphtali going to be? Or is he just going to be a producer? Joseph is the foal of a wild donkey. The foal of a wild donkey at a spring. One of the wild donkeys on the ridge. Archers attacked him savagely. They shot at him and harassed him. But his bow remained taut, and his arms were strengthened by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. By the shepherd, the rock of Israel. Wow, again, the second mention of shepherd, the rock. And I like that idea, the rock of Israel. That's another good one. That's going to come up later with Moses, actually. Moses is going to sing a song, and if I remember in that song, he sings about the rock. And have you ever sang a worship song about the rock? I think we've sung some before in the past. Some really cool old school jams. I'll have to pull one out. Yeah, Jesus is our rock, right? God is our rock. He's our foundation. There's many shifting sand things that we could look to and trust in the end of our life. But God is our rock. And I like that, man. He's solid. He's our shepherd. And I love this. Jacob's at the end of his life, and man, he's focused on God. At the end of our life, what are we going to focus on? Every day, let's just be focused on God. So if it's our last day, man, we're focused on the Lord. And it says, may God of your father help you. May the Lord Almighty bless you with the blessings of the heavens above, and the blessings of the watery depth below, and the blessings of the breast of the womb. May your fatherly blessing on you surpass the blessings of my ancestors, reaching to the heights of the eternal hills. May these blessings rest on the heads of Joseph, who is prince among his brothers. Wow. So here you see a really fulfillment of, remember those early visions, those early dreams that Joseph had regarding everybody bowing down to him. Here you see Jacob, his dad, literally giving him the ultimate blessing, the blessing of the firstborn. Now, he was the firstborn of Rachel. And so you can see how Jacob bypasses Reuben, and instead, what does he do? He is going straight to Joseph towards the end of this blessing, and he just gives the blessing, the whole entire kind of thing over, the big overflowing blessing over to Joseph, which is very awesome, right? Remember, Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, will both represent Joseph as tribes, a part of the 12 tribes of Israel. Tina says, we are going to have to find that song, Rock of Ages. A good song, and sing at church. That's right. Rock of Ages. That's one of them. I think of You Are the Rock of My Salvation. And I've done that one. You are the rock of my salvation. So there's worship songs with that term rock. God is our rock in there. You might want to look at those. Marsha, the solid rock. On this solid rock I stand. All other ground is seeking sand. That's right. There's another one. All other ground is seeking sand. That's right. So on Christ, the solid rock I stand. So very cool. So God is called the rock of Israel, the shepherd for the second time here in 2 chapters in a row. So Benjamin is a ravenous wolf, devouring his enemies in the morning and dividing his plunder in the evening. Most of the writer of the New Testament comes from this tribe, comes from the tribe of Benjamin. And so he's a ravenous wolf, devouring his enemies in the morning and dividing his plunder in the evening. Now, Paul the apostle in the New Testament, who comes from the tribe of Benjamin, definitely was, he says, an insolent man, a violent man. Meaning before he came to Christ, he was quite a violent person. And you get the idea that Benjamin, this prophecy concerning the tribe, it's a ravenous wolf devouring its enemies, dividing plunder. Gosh, very much on the move, for sure. So these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their father said as he told his sons goodbye. He blessed each one with an appropriate message. Then Jacob instructed them about burying his body in Canaan, and he gives them instructions to do so. And this is a big part. Hey, take my body, back home. And we've seen this over and over. It's kind of like that hope, right? That promise of, hey, God promised us that land. I want my body to be buried there. Now, this is why I want to read the next chapters, just so you see that it's very in the same similar idea that Jacob is doing here. Jacob's saying, hey, I'm going to die, and I want you to take my body back to this land, this cave near Mamre in Canaan, and that Abraham bought, the place where Abraham purchased years ago. I want you to take me back there. And he says, there Abraham and his wife Sarah are buried. Isaac and his wife Rebekah are buried. And there I buried Leah. It is the plot of land and the cave that was purchased from the Hittites. And so Jacob finished this saying, and he draws near he gets in bed, and he's going to take a nap, it sounds like. And then in the next chapter, Joseph throws himself on his father, okay? And he throws himself on his father, and he weeps over him, and he kisses him, okay? And Joseph tells the physicians who served him to embalm his father's body, so Jacob was embalmed. This embalming process took the usual 40 days. Wow. This is a little different than our, like, hey, someone passes away. When's the memorial? Is it next week? We when someone passes away in our world, we're already on the memorial, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's like quick. And that's not so much the flow here, right? Now, people mourned for a lot longer back then. It took them days to embalm the body. And the Egyptians mourned his death for 70 days. Man, so it was a long mourning time. When the period of mourning was over, Joseph approached Pharaoh's advisors and said, please do me a favor and speak to Pharaoh on my behalf. Tell him that my father made me swear an oath. He said to me, listen, I am about to die. Take my body back to the land of Canaan and bury me in the tomb I prepared for myself. So please allow me to go and bury my father. After his burial, I will return without delay. I love this because it's the idea of fulfilling the call, fulfilling things that God has called you to do, to really take it by the bull by the horn, so to speak, and to take action on something. Joseph could have just sat on this and just said, I'll take it someday. But he said, no, I'm going to take care of that. And I love that attitude of like, hey, this is my dad's wish. Let me get on that and let me take care of it, And I think that's always a good thing for us, to take care of things when we can, when it hits our heart, when it hits our mind, and we know there's something we need to do. Let's just get on it and start working on it, without delay. Let's do it without delay. And so Pharaoh agrees to Joseph's request. Go and bury your father as he made you promise, he said. So as Joseph went up to bury his father, and he was accompanied by all of Pharaoh's officials and all the hoopla of Egypt. Joseph also took his household, his brothers, and their households. Man, the whole crew goes back to the land of Canaan. Wow. And they arrive at the threshing floor of Atad near the Jordan River. So we're all familiar with the Jordan. And they held a very great and solemn memorial service. Wow. Isn't that cool? With a 7-day period of mourning for Joseph's father. So we see that they mourned 70 days in Egypt. They went on a long journey. They get there. They do another whole week of a memorial. And the Canaanites watched them. And then they renamed that place, which is near the Jordan, Abez Mizraim, which means mourning of the Egyptians, for they said this is the place of the mourning of the Egyptians. So Jacob's son did as they had commanded, as they were told. And I just love that kind of obedience. This is what Jacob asked, and this is what they did. They didn't complain anymore. The brothers weren't, in their moments, oh man, all that. But instead, they just go and do it. And so how cool is that? Hey, no problem, Paula. It's my blessing to be able to bring these to you. So the reason really why I wanted to read this last section to you is that after they do this, and now that their father was dead, Joseph's brothers become fearful. Now Joseph will show his anger and pay us back for all the wrong that we did to him. Isn't that interesting? When Jacob dies, now they're worried that the real colors of Joseph will show, and that really underneath all that nicety is a bunch of bitterness and resentment. So they sent messengers to Joseph, and they beg him to not treat him cruelly. And when Joseph received the message, he broke down and wept. And then his brothers came to him, and they threw themselves down before Joseph. Look, we are your slaves, they said. But Joseph replied, don't be afraid of me. Am I God that I can punish you? Ooh, is that a good one for us? Am I God that I can punish you? Ooh, put that one down in your book when you want to get back at someone. Are you God that you can punish them? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. He brought me to this position so I could save the lives of many people. Remember, God brought a sending through suffering for salvation. No, don't be afraid. I will continue to take care of you and your children. And he reassures them. Sometimes people need reassurance. Sometimes people are so skeptical that they need to be reassured and affirmed. And nothing's wrong with that. Joseph affirms them. He loves them. And he just gives them the affirmation that's needed to settle their hearts. Sometimes we tend to think everybody's going to be like us, and we think of how we would act, and maybe we would act in bitterness. So we project that onto other people, and we think they are going to act in bitterness. And so we're surprised when they don't act in bitterness, and then we become very skeptical, like we're waiting for the shoe to drop. And that's certainly how they were. They had a lot of projection going on on Joseph, their own hearts. And it says, now Joseph says, so Joseph and his brothers and their families continue to live in Egypt, and Joseph lived till the age of 110. Now we notice again, ages are starting to dip down lower and lower. He lived to see 3 generations of descendants of the sons of Ephraim, and he lived to see the birth of the children of Manasseh, son Machir, whom he claimed to his own. So another interesting point is that there is a few generations being mentioned here of Ephraim, and that's something to underline and maybe think of when you study prophecy, is how long is a generation? Kind of interesting there. Soon I will die, Joseph told his brothers, but God will surely come to help you and lead you out of the land of Egypt. He will bring you back to the land he solemnly promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear an oath and said to them, when God comes to help you and lead you back, you must take my bones with you. So Joseph died at the age of 110, and the Egyptians embalmed him, and his body was placed in a coffin in Egypt. Now I want you to just see how it's so cool. When Jacob does the right thing and Jacob says, hey, bury me back in the land of Israel. Take me back there. Notice who takes note of that. Joseph does. And what does Joseph say when he's going to die? He says, yo, take me back to the land of Israel too. There's going to come a time where you guys are going to go back And when the whole nation goes back, you guys will be a mighty nation by then. God's going to cause you to prosper here in Egypt. There is something that God has done. Why Israel was in Egypt was, remember, a saving, a salvation. There was a famine, and they became fed and prospered in Egypt. But notice that Joseph's heart is just like his dad's. It's right back into the land of promise. Joseph lived most of his life in Egypt. Most of us assimilate into the new places that we've been in before. But not these Israelites, not these Hebrews. Where do they always want to go back? To the land of Israel. They always want to go back to the land of Israel. They don't assimilate per se into their new culture, though they've been there for years, for 70 years, 80 years, whatever. Even though they're in these new lands, they speak the language of the new people, everything. Where do they want to go back? Back to where the promise was at. Always go back to the promise. Always go back to the promises of God. Always go back to the salvation that you were saved with, the call of God that he called you out of when he called you out of the world. Man, so cool. Love that. Anyway, it's a long Devo, but super cool. A lot of cool stuff. 2 chapters about death, but it's about, hey, the promise, the future promise. Man, God's going to get us home to the promised land. No matter how much we're part of this world and we get assimilated into it, the Christian's heart's always to be where? With the Lord. That's right. So you guys take care, okay? Bye-bye.